So Jacqueline, here you can meet the people from Planetary Healing Club, and here's Jacqueline. We did the show on bees, which I hope everybody will listen to as much as you can. There's a lot hidden in there of really deep wisdom, and it's super fortunate to meet people like this. So what I want to know, Jacqueline, is for people that a lot of these things are new to, and they've just seen bees flying around in terms of what you're taught. In other words, is that bee going to sting me, which is what they usually do, or just fly away and sting somebody else? I mean, and trying to get from that level to, and people actually run inside their houses to get away from them and stuff when the bee doesn't even notice them.
I've seen it.
Right. So coming from that consciousness to what you can learn with bees, and if you're just not on a farm but living anywhere and there's still some bees around, hopefully, how can you start learning from them and maybe the same kind of things in other ways too, so that your consciousness can start growing?
That's a good place probably for me to share how this happened to me, that I started communicating with bees. Yeah. Because it was really my intention. I didn't wake up one day and say, "Hey, bees, talk, tell me what you're doing." Right. When I first started sitting next to the beehives and watching them, I remember thinking, and like I said, I had gone to conventional bee school and realized I was not going to do any of that, but I had bees and I didn't know how to take care of them. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting next to them in my early years saying, "I will do absolutely anything to help you be healthy and happy here, but I don't know what to." It was before the days of the internet. There weren't discussion groups. There wasn't YouTube. Right. There weren't a lot of, bees were not yet the fad that they started to become. There weren't a lot of books for me to read. So I just went to the bees and I said, I'll do anything. You just have to help me out and tell me what is it that I can do. And I don't know how many times I had that thought. It wasn't always a sentence formed like that, but it was the heartfulness that I sat next to the beehives with. And I just said, I will do what you asked me to do. And I committed myself to that. And I probably had that idea for about 6 years. And then one day I woke up and I was just in that place between sleep and awake. And I just had this voice in my head telling me something about the bees. And I grabbed my journal and started writing it down and went, and then I read it back and went, wow, that is something I never knew about bees. And I don't know where that came from. And the next morning it happened again. And the next morning it happened again. It was like, I honestly feel like what happened was I made an earnest commitment and I didn't know it at the time.
I think it's the sincerity of it. It's not just the words, huh?
Yeah, it's the sincerity of it. And I asked for help and I asked again and again and again without feeling like, why aren't you answering me? It was none of that. Right. It was just, I'm here. If there's anything you want to share with me, I'm here and I will do that. Right. And I do believe it's the sincerity. And so the whole book evolved out of these communications that they started to put forward. And I know things like that happen. Some of the information when they started talking about complex ideas, there were things, I know I'm a smart person, but there were things I had to go to Google and Google, what is a quark? Q-U-A-R-K. I was like, I know sort of what it is, but I don't really know what it is. There were conversations I had to have with my computer to get me to understand some of the information that the bees were giving me and put it in a language that even I could understand. So that was really interesting to find that. So I would say it is the sincerity is probably the best word for it. The sincerity and repetitive. I showed up day after day after day saying, I'm here.
Persistence.
I'm here.
Yeah.
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 And it was a surprise. too. It was a complete surprise what happened.
I should have brought this up during our main show about the bees because, people might not familiar with getting this kind of information from a different life form like bees. They're trying to picture, like, is this bee showing up at like Mr. Ed, right? And just talking and saying, yeah, Jacqueline, take notes on this. This is exactly what we think. It wasn't exactly like that. So
I know, and people sometimes say, well, can you come talk to one of my hives? And I think it's not like that. It's not like it's a communication with any one bee or even one hive. It's the bee kingdom, the bee, community. It's like more of the larger view of bees in the world.
Yeah, it's funny how humans are always trying to describe things in their own terms, like some aspect of themselves. And there really are different life forms. They're not all like either inanimate or little humans.
And bees they're actually a kind of a unique life form anyway. They're what science calls a superorganism. One bee on its own cannot survive. And yet all the bees, the 20 or 30,000 of them, each have a task to do. And by the community of tasks that they do, that's how the colony survives. But if you have, if nobody's collecting food, then everyone starves. If no one's making the wax, there are no eggs to be laid on the comb or food to be stored. If no one's guarding the front door, there's 100 tasks that are done. You have to have someone who's a group of bees inside who are the cleanup, the janitorial staff. Everyone has to do the job, or any one blank spot in there means the demise of all of them. So they have a tremendous cooperation.
If you look at humanity right now in those terms instead of vice versa, this is like a giant hive that went crazy, where all the members are working against each other, or at least a lot of them. And you said that the consciousness of the bees is such that the individual knows what the other individuals are experiencing. Mm-hmm. Why assume that humans don't have that potential ability to feel that too? Maybe we do, and we just don't use it.
Yeah, I think that actually you bring up a really good point there, because I think what we go into then is we as humans do something that bees do not do. I've screwed up and dropped a comb of honey into a hive and made a smush of a huge error. I screwed up. And all the bees, I immediately felt like, oh, dang, I screwed up. I shouldn't have done that. I knew I shouldn't have done that. I did it. I made a mess. And I'm doing this self-beration. And every bee in there looked and went, a mess. It needs to be cleaned up. I shall start now.
Right.
And there was
not that stupid owner. We have to retaliate right away. What are we going to do to her and all this stuff?
There was no blaming. There was immediate and utter forgiveness. And I remember how profoundly that struck me. I thought about it for days afterwards, that there is no transgression held. There's no harm in intention.
And it's probably not even forgiveness in the sense of saying, well, you did a really bad thing, but we'll forgive you. It's like, we're not even looking at that. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's a lesson that I carry with me near daily. I try to anyway. Is about, forgiveness happens in the moment. That, I'm married. I have certainly a capacity for, I'm married to a man that I live with. Every day we can screw up, and yet we use our marriages as a canvas for immediate forgiveness over and over and over and over again, which I think helps build the capacity for community in there. Is that making sense?
Yeah, that's incredible. I think that's really important. There's a difference between forgiveness, saying, well, you were really bad, but I'm going to try not to hold it against you, versus what the bees do. That's not even a question. It's like, what do we do to repair whatever needs to be fixed?
What needs to happen right now to carry us further forward?
Yeah.
And then we do. Yeah, there's no high emotion or charge or anything. And I do believe that in the deeper thoughts that I have about that charge is what entangles us, whether it's in our thought process or our interactions. When we screw up like that, we create an entanglement that's really hard for us to get out of and get back into our creative selves again.
Yeah, exactly. And we're creating all the barriers ourselves and then blaming it on everybody else. It's like you said in the marriage relationship, it's either seen as a really difficult thing or a series of opportunities for learning about harmony, right? And depending on which one of those you see, it's a different experience. So, well, you just gave everybody enough to work on for their whole life, I think. But the thing that's exciting about it too is that what if we actually did that stuff, and then we could find out what the next step might be?
Yeah.
If one bee understands what all the other bees are experiencing, that could be seen on a limited tunnel vision type thing as well. Those bees, they don't even have individuality. I mean, they don't have anything, but the opposite perspective is, every single bee in there has so much power that they affect the whole hive or the whole colony.
Yeah. There's I saw a thing happen one day where I was out on my deck and I had 2 hives up there, and I was just doing what I usually do: watch bees land, go inside, come out, fly off. I can spend hours doing that. And I watched this little bee come in, and she walked up to the front door, and there's guard bees who, check bees out to make sure they're supposed to come in this one. Yeah. And she got to the front, and this little guard bee just kind of stopped her, and she backed up, and she started to go in again, and he stopped her again. And then she backed up, and then this second guard bee came over, the front door entrance bees came over and checked her out, and he blocked her. And so she turned around and started walking away. And I noticed as she was walking away that her wings were tattered. And that told me that she was an elderly bee. She was on, nearing the end of her life, really.
Okay.
They can tell by her smell that, less life force, there's less scent coming out of her. Right. And they acknowledged that at the front door. And when she turned on her heel and started walking away, she was acknowledging that same thing too. For the good of the hive, I depart. I, in my erroneous human thinking, picked her up on my finger and brought her back to the front entrance and said, no, there must be some mistake.
Yeah. I'm the boss of these TSA bees. Right?
And I put her down there, and the 2 guard bees didn't even do anything. She just turned and walked the other way. And okay, stupidly, I picked her up and did it exactly the same again. And she went, no, I do not belong here anymore. And she turned around and walked all the way across the edge of the deck and just fell off the deck into the rosemary bush, where I'm sure she just, that was the end of her life.
Right.
That consciousness in there was for the good of the hive. For the good of the hive, this action takes place. And there was no feeling of sacrifice or any of that. It wasn't like that. It was more, she does this out of love.
So it's a super delicate point, because what we've got right now is really malicious, corrupt rulers of the world telling people to give up their freedoms for the good of the world, but it's not real, because you have to have benevolent, leaders demonstrating it, not tyrants saying, well, you have to die for the good of what we have planned over here. So humans have a way to go before they're, up to that level of what was being demonstrated, but it's possible.
Yeah. Learning to live without harm is really a good first step.
Yeah, I think that's enough to keep you busy. So, okay, well, I hope you come back soon. That's some good stuff for us to absorb.